that owner missed out on $200,000. I mean, that's
That hurts.
for sure.
Welcome to The Explore Show, where we dive into the worlds of entrepreneurship, real estate, and motivation. Each week, we bring you inspiring conversations with people who are exploring new frontiers and shaping the business world. Thank you for tuning in. Now let's get to the show.
What's going on, guys? Today, we've got a good friend of mine here in Kansas City on the show, Micquelyn Malina. She is a real estate expert. She does quite a bit of land transactions here in Kansas City and new development, new construction, but a little bit of everything on the residential resale side. So, Mikey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show today. It sounds like you actually were just at a real estate mastermind here. What were you doing this morning?
Well, really, it's a lot of the top agents in Kansas City, regardless of brokerage. We get together once a month and just talk about what we're seeing in the market, changes that are happening, really discussing what our individual businesses are like and, how we can really just take more market share.
So no better prep for this show than that meeting this morning, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect. So let's talk about it a little bit. What is going on in the Kansas City market? What are we seeing on the residential side of things? What's changed over the past 6 to 12 months?
It's constantly changing. We're seeing this in the last, since really last July is when the interest rates changed. I've been selling real estate for 26 years now. So for me, none of that really affects me. It's all about, I know people are going to move because of life cycle changes. People are getting married, graduating college, having babies, kids going off to college, getting divorced, dying. There's lots of things happening in people's lives that affect the real estate market. And as long as we focus on that, then, we're going to be fine. We're going to have that good database relationship business. Right now, our MLS is down 13%. And my business is up 20%. So we're outperforming the market by 33%. So
humble brag. Very nice.
Well, no, and it really just comes back to, as long as you're focusing on that, not just about, what's happening out there in the national real estate media. Kansas City is very insulated from all of these. Even back in 2008, I was still in business. We were still selling properties because they were hard conversations. People had to bring money to the table to close because the market crashed, and very different than what we're seeing now or anything. Last year, fourth quarter was our best quarter after rates went up. And it really came down to, what are our clients saying? And we want to get in front of them and answer their questions. So
and tell me if I'm wrong. I think a lot of the reason, and a lot of people saw a very good fourth quarter last year. A lot of the reason was, they started raising rates very early in the year, March or so, and they just kept raising them every month. So people were starting to kind of panic, thinking there was going to be some big recession. But by July or August, people kind of just got comfortable with them and said, what you just said, we still need to move. We still have to do things. We can't just keep sitting around waiting. So then it kind of took off again into the year last year. Is that right?
Well, agents in my office, and we have the largest office in Kansas City. We sell more real estate than any other office in Kansas City. That there's a lot of people that were agents that were struggling, and they were struggling because, like, our clients were coming to us and saying, hey, we're going to wait. We're going to wait until next year. We think a crash is coming. And so we actually did an event at Boulevard Brewery, and we gathered all of our clients. We said, come if you want to hear about what's happening in the market. Because if we're getting the same question over and over again, we want to get in front of as many people as possible. I think we had about 65, 70 people show up, and we just explained to them, you are seeing a crash. I'm doing air quotes of, like, you are seeing that right now. We're in it because everybody else is waiting. You can go in and negotiate with the seller. It's still a seller's market because of inventory, but you can go in and negotiate. You can ask for inspection repairs. There were so many new agents that didn't understand about inspection, repair, negotiation, and they were getting ready to walk away. And so that's where we see some of these agents that are getting out of the business. I think NAR reported 60,000 have gotten gotten out of the business in 2023. So, and that was up to June. So we'll see a lot more of that in December when dues come, you have to pay your dues again. But that's, but just educating your clients on what the reality is. We're insulated in Kansas City. We don't see the big swings that the coast.
You said we were insulated twice now. Will you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
We just don't see the huge jumps like Las Vegas, Arizona, the coast, that those see in pricing jumps. So we don't see the low swings either. So we have a lot of big companies for a small metropolitan city like we are. We have colleges here. We have a lot. Of course, the Chiefs are here, right? Why wouldn't you want to be here for the Chiefs? And so we're a little more protected. We have one of the highest net worth zip codes in the country, and people are usually surprised to hear about that. So,
and another cool stat is Prairie Village, right here in the heart of Kansas City, was the #1 search city on Zillow last year, I believe, was the stat, which is kind of crazy to think about being from here, but that. No, it was the #1 search city on Zillow, I believe. And you might check that to make sure I'm not making it up, but it was up there, which is pretty impressive. School districts are great. I mean, there's a lot of benefits, and the price of living is still very reasonable when you're talking competition versus other markets across the country.
Absolutely. So it was about 4 or 5 years ago. I have a business coach, and he asked me, what is your biggest challenge right now in the real estate market? So it was inventory back then. Even we're saying inventory right now, it's the buzzword in real estate, but it was the biggest challenge. And so I grew up on acreage. We lived on 10 acres growing up. I sold a lot of properties like that because might as well sell real estate where you live because you know it better than anybody. Who else is going to protect pricing better than someone that lives there? So I knew that area very well. And I lived in Prairie Village after I graduated college. I went to Rockhurst University right in Kansas City, Missouri. So urban, and then we lived in Prairie Village. So I wasn't living on acreage. So that's where it makes me different than a lot of agents is understanding land, understanding the marketing side, and understanding in-town residential real estate. Of those two things are usually a circle. Like you usually move from in town, whether it's suburban or urban, you're usually moving urban to suburban, then out to the country if you're wanting to make a change like that. So I just said, if we have these people that want to move from the suburban homes, how can we create more 1 to 2 5-acre properties? I have the large land listings also. I work with a lot of the farmers that are ready to get out of owning all this land, and they're in their 80s and they want to sell, and kids don't want to take over. So how can we divide it up? Because land is worth more if it's in smaller pieces. A lot of real estate agents in Kansas City don't understand that, but they want to buy 5 acres off an 80-acre tract. And I'm like, you can't just go do that. That's not how this works. So I just started going to the farmers and saying, let's do this. Let's divide the land up, finding developers. The traditional developers in Kansas City did not want to create a subdivision that didn't have sewers. And I said to them, I called all of them. I had a really great piece that was going to make a perfect subdivision, large lot, luxury, new construction subdivision. And I called them all and I said, here's this opportunity. And they said, no, that's not in our wheelhouse. We only do things with sewers. I'm like, why would you want something that's not going to be your cost anymore? If I'm bringing you a large lot subdivision, well, because they're only thinking about dense, right? They make more money off dense, small lots, 3 lots per acre, right? 30-acre lot, they're going to make more money off that than selling a 2-acre tract. But showing them the business model behind not having to put in sewers and curb and gutter and all these things that are going to raise their development costs when this is going to be a super quick sale. And now they all call me, because I found a developer that had never done it before. And he was looking just to, how can I make more off my money other than the stock market and all these things that like you're investing in. And there weren't as many people buying rentals, 5 years ago.
Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned talking to farmers that, they have all this land and they're looking to maybe sell some of it off, but don't want to move. What I've seen personally, a little bit more on the investor side, is older individuals that might own a pretty decent sized portfolio of rental properties. A similar situation. They really don't want to get rid of all of them, but they also don't want to deal with the hassle. So we've started to find ways to get creative and say, hey, why don't we go ahead and own or finance these, or do, sell a few of them, or coming up with just different ways of thinking and putting these in front of options in front of individuals, versus going and telling them, hey, you just need to sell all of them. But then they have a huge tax liability. So how can we help them there? On the land side, what's that look like? I know we were talking last week and you mentioned some deals that you've been dealing with in this scenario.
Yeah, we just closed one on Monday that it was a 40-acre tract. It had just a small ranch home on it. It's 0.8 acres of the 40 acres, which is rare to find it not in one tract of land. So I said, you have this opportunity. You can sell all this rest of this land off, live in your house, stay here. But the seller came along and said, no, I want to own all of it. I want to own the house. So we were having a challenge of that. I said, the seller might be open to you giving them, he ended up giving them a 10-year possession after close. They're not going to stay there 10 years. They're 80 years old. They're looking to move, but they wanted to do it on their time. They wanted to move into an independent living, but they're not ready yet. So it worked out great for them. It was a win because the seller can buy that little house, the whole 40-acre tract at today's pricing, and not get into a bidding war, not get into all of this, because a ranch home on a few acres is going to go crazy. It's going to sell for a lot more than what he would have paid. And in the meantime, the sellers get to, anytime they're ready to go in the next 10 years, that I realize that's not realistic, they can just take their clothes, take their toothbrush, go, and they're done. And that takes because we run into a lot of widows living in, typically the man passes away before the wife, and then the widows that in their house, I talk to a lot of them. I probably have 5 that I call once a month, just check in, see how they're doing. They're on acreage and they're upset that they should have done that and made that decision with their husband. So this gives them the option to make that decision right now. Each instance is different. So you have to be ready to listen to what makes sense to them and solve that problem. So we're just doing that.
Creating different opportunities. People sometimes just need to slow down, listen what people actually want, and quit trying to force them into what you want for them.
Exactly. And you can make it a win. And it worked perfect for everybody involved. They're all super happy. The buyer is he's going to put in a road and he's going to start building on the rest of the acreage right now. And he has a great rental property when they move.
That's awesome. When it comes to Kansas City, let's talk about some opportunities and land and development here, and kind of what that looks like for developers. And let's actually dig into the numbers a little bit. So on a traditional residential piece of ground, what's it going to run per acre roughly, and what's a developer going to make? Let's get into that a little bit.
That's the billion-dollar question. Like, what's an acre of land run? It's like it's just, they're not created equal. I mean, right now we're seeing in more rural areas close to 20,000 an acre up to 80 acres. Is what we've been seeing in the Western Johnson County area. If you want to,
guys, let me tell you, when she says rural, I don't know that I would consider it rural. So when you're in Kansas City, we have our metropolitan is very spread out, just for the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, that's rural for us that we're talking about is 20 minutes. It's not production farm ground, anything like that. It's a nice piece you might even be 10 minutes from 5 minutes, 10 minutes from the local grocery store, the schools, things like that. So that's a good point. Rural is different than other parts of the country here.
Yeah, a lot of people are thinking rural is an hour or two from the city, and really we're talking about 30, maybe 40 minutes from the heart of the city, probably.
Yeah, at the max. So
20,000 an acre up to 80 acres. Okay. And what kind of restrictions, requirements, what do these subdivisions look like?
Well, if you're in the county, that's a lot easier. If you're in the city, one of the biggest challenges the cities have is just the excise tax and per acre. I mean, we were looking to develop 1 million. It was, let's see, it was 150 acres. I think the excise tax was $1 million. So that takes a big piece out of the profit, and we didn't end up doing the project. So if we can stay in the county where the county's making the rules and we're going before those zoning boards and that county commissioners, there's a lot less rules. We can do a road that is hard surface, county regulation, but there's ditches on either side. It's not curb and gutter. You're not putting in street lights, you're not putting in sewers, because as long as you're 2 acres, the buyer cost is a septic tank, and that's their sanitation. So that cuts down on a lot of issues for the developer and takes out. So if we can, it doesn't cut into their profit. So
Significant cost savings.
correct. And if we can find a developer that's also the builder, that's the sweet spot.
Yeah. What are the numbers? So like a developer here is probably looking to make 35 to 50% on their money.
Correct. That's
minimum.
what they say. But if we find non-traditional builders that or developers that say, hey, I'm happy with 20% in a year. Can you get me 20% in a year and a half? Well, realistically, it's probably 3 years.
Yeah.
They're pretty happy with that. They've been fine with that. So
What's that? What do those houses look like if they're looking at 20% return or 30% return? What's that subdivision going to be? What type of houses? What type of cost is that going to be to build that out?
2.5 million. That's probably maybe even gone up to 3 million now. But the developer, if they're not
$3 million for the land.
For the whole build out of the house and for the buyer, the end buyer consumer, that's what they're buying. So 2 million is what the end. You're talking about what the development costs are for when they go by.
Yeah. So I'm a little confused. What's that 2 to 3 million? Sorry.
Oh, that's the end consumer, what they're going to build, buy the land for. They're all finished, moved in for. That's the buyer that we're looking for. I always think about the end in mind. Who is going to be this buyer? What's it going to look like? What are they going to build? Who are the builders that are going to come build there? And it's going to be a custom, probably about 2.5 million purchase price. So thinking about that.
How many of those buyers do you have? Man, I need some of those on my books.
You're surprised there's a lot out there right now. I mean, right now with 7% interest rates, we're not seeing a lot right now, but there's so much disposable income in Kansas City that they just want a little more space, and they're able to do well on the house that they bought 7-8 years ago. That's increased in value, and they have a lot of equity in there. So
is that like a 5-acre tract typically then?
Yes. 2 acres.
2 acres.
Okay. We want to get it as dense as possible, and 2 acres is the minimum for a septic tank. Yeah.
So then you'll go in and you'll put 15 to 22 $2 million houses in a subdivision.
Yeah. We had 17 in the last one that we did. 17.
All right. Man, that sounds like something we need to get in and go on together. Go do it.
Yeah. I love it.
We can do it that quick.
Because what happens is those people will move. We have just like a bottleneck right now in that 650 price point of homes. And they're not going to move to an 800 because the house isn't any different. It doesn't do anything for them. So understanding that these are buyers that don't have to move, they want to move. So it's not a need, it's a want. But we need their houses. We need them to move out of their houses so that all those move up buyers can get in. We're not able to create more inventory. So as long as we're creating inventory for a market that will leave their house, there's a reason they're going to leave their house. Can we do that? So
let's talk a little bit about more. I don't even want to call them affordable because they're not going to be affordable in the kind of market that you're in, really. But let's talk about build to rent communities and what we're seeing. Have you worked much on any of those? Do you see any opportunities in your area for those type of product to come in?
I mean, it's a little challenging. First of all, if they're just going to come in and build and rent them out, it's a little bit of a challenge for that right now with rates higher. So that's kind of where we've seen a challenge on that. But I think there is an opportunity. And, if you get closer to the airport, if you get in different areas but we don't have a lot of national builders in Kansas City because the local builders are okay with making 20%, and those national builders want to make a lot more. And so we've had a few try to come in. Pulte was in Kansas City for a little while and they didn't do great. I mean, so we have a couple.
Yeah, they got
just
crushed back in 08 and 09.
Yeah, I mean, mostly because we have those local builders that are okay with taking a 20% profit margin, is what we've seen.
What do you think someone could build and develop a subdivision if there were build to rent? You think you could get a product out there for 400,000 or less all in?
You know, it's going to be, the house is probably going to be a lot smaller in square footage. We see a couple of those there look like almost row homes, you know, and those sold really well because, but the build to rent, I haven't had a lot of experience with that, the build to rent.
Yeah,
But I know
actually, there's
it's
one
done well
going in.
in-
There's quite a few going in down in southern Johnson County. So there's one going in Spring Hill that I know
Yeah.
about. It's supposedly, what I've been told is they've got a waiting list essentially to rent those out. So they're right now
Sure.
they're delivering about 2 to 3 a month, but by springtime they want to be delivering like 10 to 12 a month, I think is what I was told. And they've got a wait list to get into those, and they're renting them out at $3,000 a month.
It's a huge opportunity because, I mean, the amount of apartments going in around here, and I mean, people want to get out of an apartment, and if they still are not saving their money, because we know that credit card debt is high and things like that, they're not going to have that down payment with interest rates going up. Most of the consumers do not prepare to be able to save. We have a lot of first-time home buyers. Their parents are financing them right now. They're cash buyers and they're doing the family loans. So I think it's a huge opportunity if you have a house that is rental. I mean, you know, we just don't have enough.
Yeah, and I'm talking entire subdivisions of just build to rent.
Yeah. I've seen that in Austin, and I have a few friends that have worked on those. So I think it's an opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's, especially if you know land as well as you do in Kansas City, I think there's a pretty good opportunity there. It just comes down to you've got to be at the right price basis in your land costs. And that's where it gets tricky because land is still pretty darn expensive. And they want A+ school districts. Well, that kind of goes hand in hand with price increases, right? So makes it
difficult. On the Kansas side, any of the schools are good. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
The smaller town schools, people, I mean, they're all really good schools. There's no school district in, you know, Johnson County that I would say, ooh, you might want to stay clear of, even in Miami County.
Yeah. Oh, I would agree with that. And on the Kansas City side, the Missouri side, it gets a little bit more tricky, especially for these institutional buyers to get comfortable. I think in a lot of areas, you got to go to pretty niche areas like Lee Summit or Parkville or up north by the airport.
Those are great areas. I mean, if you're in Kansas City, Missouri, we know pretty much the buyer or the renter has to build in enough if they have school-age kids to pay for private school.
Private, or there's some great charter schools, you know, and the public schools are trying to come around. Hopefully one of these days they'll get there, but there are some great charter schools around the city. You just have to really dig in and understand and know what you're looking at.
I would agree. But
now the trend in Kansas City, tell me if this is accurate in your opinion, but the most land left to develop and not be more than 30, 40 minutes away from the city is the Northland on the Missouri side.
Yeah, there's huge opportunities.
There's a big opportunity up there, in my opinion. The schools are amazing.
Yes.
You know, it's been the last couple of years, it's really started to develop pretty significantly, but there's still so much ground available up there. Would you, if you were an out-of-state investor, where would you recommend or tell them to be looking for ground here in Kansas City?
Well, I mean, and it depends on what they're wanting to do with it. I mean, if it's a buy and hold,
build to rent community.
Okay, for sure. I would look North Kansas City in those Parkville, North Kansas City school districts, for sure. Sometimes you have some build costs with the amount of rock and excavation. That's probably one of the biggest challenges up there. But yeah, we also have. Go ahead, keep on.
I was gonna say, I think I would agree with that. Number one, because there's the most land up there. Number two, if we are going to continue to grow as a city and bring in any big national businesses or like an Amazon or somebody huge, they're going to want to be closer to the airport. So that area is right there by the airport. So that is something strategically over the next 10 to 15 years you got to really consider.
No, I agree. And even going west and east of, the city, I mean, there's so much farm ground up there. So yeah, we also have investors that, they just want to buy land to hold. And so sometimes we just closed a few months ago with an investor. I found this 40-acre tract for him. It was $200,000 and it was nice, but not great. I mean, it was okay. You can't really do much with it as a production ground. You're not going to make any money, but it's cheap to hold. Your taxes are super low, $30-$50 a year to hold on taxes.
Wow.
So what we did was he was like, all right, I'm ready to buy something else. I'm going to exchange it into something else, do a 1031 exchange. So what we did was we split that into two 20-acre tracts, which I made sure he could do that before he bought it. I sold the first piece. So we always price them accordingly. Like the better piece, we want to price higher, that you're okay if you sell it for this amount. That's kind of a crazy amount, not too crazy, but reasonable. But you want to sell it for, if you sell for more, you're okay. The lesser piece you can sell for less. You can drop the price on that. So we sold the worst piece. I think we sold first. No, the better piece we sold for $217. And remember, he bought the whole for $200. So we sold the better piece for $217, and then we sold the worst piece for $185. And he did owner financing on that one because at the time he couldn't sell it. He had too many other things that he had sold, so he just held it he held the loan on it and did owner financing on it. I think the guys ended up paying 6% because land is a lot higher interest rate on that. So he ended up grossing $202 on it plus the owner financing. So it's a 3-year loan. So
he doubled his money plus financing.
Yes. And he 1031'd it into something else that he can play with and have fun with. So, but it's looking for those opportunities that we can go, all right, where's a piece of land that maybe isn't listed? I can get in front of the seller. Maybe it's listed with another agent. That was actually listed by another real estate agent who owned it. And he called me. He's like, man, did you guys bamboozle me or what? I'm like, no, it's,
you got to know what you have. I mean, my goodness.
But not understanding that they can go split something up, that land is worth more if you divide it up and you get it smaller. So understanding and knowing who to talk to and how to talk to them about how to split it.
That's a big, I don't want to say it's a problem, but that is key. You've got to, if you have land, I mean, really any unique product of real estate, you have to understand what you're selling, or else you're not doing the best diligence for being a fiduciary for your seller, in my opinion. And it's sad because we see this a lot, but I mean, that brings opportunity for us, right? Because then we can go in and bring our clients, but it's sad to see some of these deals we might lose out listing opportunity wise, go to people that have no clue what they're doing just because they offered 1% less commission. Well, you're going to make way less at the end of the day net profit by doing that.
Absolutely. I mean, look, that owner missed out on $200,000. I mean, that
hurts
for sure. So,
but those are opportunities we love.
You didn't understand it. And no, I will never try to take on commercial property that's a shopping center, like not something I need in my world. I'll refer that out to somebody else and people will call me. I sell commercial ground, just raw land, but I'm not going to mess with the other. So,
yeah. So when it comes to an out-of-state investor, I guess if they're looking to do an investment here in Kansas City in land, would you recommend just doing the quick flips like that? Would you recommend rezoning? Where are they going to make the most money quickest?
Okay, for instance, I have a piece of land listed right now that was sold at rural residential. They were going to 10 acres. They were going to build on it, build their dream home. Well, Panasonic came in. It's in DeSoto, where Panasonic is building the battery plant right across the street. So we know that because, I listen to this and we pay attention. We know that's in the path to it's going to be multi-use commercial. And so my seller was like going crazy. We need to get this rezoned. We need to do this. I'm like, nothing's built yet. There's no infrastructure. I told her, we're not going to rezone this because you're going to pay commercial prices or taxes on this. As long as we can educate the public that this isn't the path and this is right next to it, we can do that. So you never want to rezone something that's going to change your tax basis. Like that's as long as you have documentation from the city or the county and you have the maps and you see that and you're involved in all of that, then let's wait on it. Let's see. When the next buyer comes along and is ready to do it, they already understand that you've done that due. That's the difference between you and I probably and the regular commercial agent, because we'll do all of that behind the scenes footwork and make sure that we know what a buyer can do with that property versus other commercial agents who call and say, hey, what can we do with this land? I'm not telling you, you got to figure that out yourself. And I'm like,
Yep.
right, trying to sell this. So being able to understand what's happening and with that property and what the future growth can be. So I always say out of state person coming in, don't change anything until you're ready to start building it out, creating what you need to create that's actually going to give you a return on it. So I do that hand in hand. It can take a little while. So just understanding what municipality you're dealing with and make sure you have it.
Yeah, the municipalities, although it seems like it's all one big city in Kansas City, the municipalities are so different and there are so many of them. So that's been one of the trickiest parts, I believe, for national builders here is there isn't one building code. There isn't one set of codes that they can go and just know the whole city. Every single area has its own and very unique differences.
Yes.
And it causes a lot of problems here for national players.
I'm sure it does. And not being able to get with, I've got an investor from Denver that they do a lot of like multifamily and things. So he just is like, we need someone on the ground that knows who to talk to and what city. So I'm like, I know one person, the best person to talk to in each planning and zoning department and I know their rules. And I also know what variances we can ask for. And that's my favorite word, variance. They may have their rules, but it doesn't mean that we have to abide by them. Some of them are not common sense and don't make any sense at all. And it's like, we can work around it. So
there's always not always, but a lot of times there are workarounds. You just have to know how to ask the right questions or talk to the right people that can make it happen.
Well, and find the substantiating properties that already have it and support what you're trying to do. So the evidence. Yeah, we love to do that.
I couldn't agree more. Well, I greatly appreciate your time today. I don't want to take up too much more. Let me ask you one last question, though. If you are going to invest in Kansas City, where are you going to put your money personally?
Well, personally, I like to look in Johnson County. I've done really well with buying land. And what I like to do is find a piece of land that has a terrible house on it. And if you can find it and you offer them something, you make it as easy as possible. Because worst case scenario, the house is a tear down. Best case, you can maybe rent the property out or the house out and like that. And it's something maybe you can divide up. I've done really well with properties that other agents had listed and they did not have it listed appropriately. I made $30,000 on a property in like a month and a half that I bought. I paid cash for, no problem, relisted it the correct way and closed on it. So
crazy how that works.
Yeah. I mean, I had another property. It was a tear down. I said, wow, I can't go in and see the house. The lady was in tax trouble. We found it and just gave her the money, let her stay as long as she wanted within reason. She stayed 2 months and we said, okay, we can't go in and see the house. Hopefully we can renovate it. It was terrible. We just tore it down. I think I bought it for $50,000 and sold it for $185,000. So
wow. Yeah. And that's because you bulldozed it and the land was worth more without that house on it.
Correct. And we put a road in. We did put a road in.
Wow.
So we were all in for like maybe $75,000. So, and we just 1031'd it. We have a rental down at the lake and we use it and we rent it.
You enjoy it. So that's good. That's awesome. Well, I greatly appreciate you coming on the show today. Is there anything else you would like to leave before we end?
No, I just love to look for
Where can
those.
people get a hold of you, I guess? Give us some information on where people can get a hold of you or find you.
Yeah, well, MalinaRealEstate.com, and I'm on all the socials. It's tricky to spell. You'll put it in the show notes, maybe.
Yeah, it'll be in the show notes. We'll get it on here.
Yeah, Micquelyn, but my cell is just 913-645-5130. And people
All
can
right,
call.
gonna be hitting you up.
Yeah, awesome. I love to find those properties and solve the whatever an investor wants to do. That's what it comes down to. Like we can
Getting
figure it
creative.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting creative with what they want and solving their challenges.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, thank you guys for listening to the show. If you have any questions, please reach out. We will see you again next time.